So aboard the Ironwood, we have two boilers. Number one, which is forward. Number two, directly next to it here, or the aft one here. One and two boilers. These are not boilers that produce steam. They don't really make steam for propulsion. What they do is generate hot water, so we can distribute that hot water throughout the ship to the individual air handlers in the different compartments located throughout the ship. And we can take the cool air, run that cool air across the coils where that hot water is, and warm up the air as it's coming out of these air handlers. So this is a fire tube boiler, which means there's 100% volume of water in here. It's full of water, completely full of water. There is a head tank up above the fiddly that's accessible from the weather deck on the starboard side. That head tank maintains a positive water level and a positive pressure, although minute, in the boiler. The tubes are fire tubes, which means combustion is occurring above the tubes. The blower is blowing that combustion air through the tubes. We have the nozzle with the fuel nozzle right here that's pushing that hot air, that combustion gases, the heat of combustion, through the tubes. So they start at the top, go down, come around, back out the outside, and out through the exhaust and all the way up to the stack. So this boiler uses diesel fuel. It has a blower, it has a small fuel pump, and motor controller. So let's take a look at the motor controller. So the control panel for number one boiler is located right here on the forward bulkhead of the engine room, just to the left or to the port side of our workbench over here. Number two boiler's control panel's right below it. So on this side right here, we've got some indicators and some controls. Let's take a closer look at those. So is this close enough? We've got a couple visual and audibles and a control switch. So we've got the flame out. So if the boiler's in operation and it loses fuel supply, or the nozzle gets clogged for some reason and the flame goes out, this light will illuminate. It happens to be red. Can't really see it right now because it's not illuminated. Directly below it is the low water visual indicator, which is blue. So if there's a low water level that's sensed, it will extinguish the fire. It will shut the boiler down, and you will get the low level or low water alarm visual indicator. Also, with either one of these alarms, when they sound, you'll get the audible bell ringing. So the controller to activate the boiler right here, when I shift from off to on, I'm literally setting a procedure in motion called a light off process. So we're going to light off the boiler. We're not going to start it. We're not going to energize it. We're going to light off the boiler. So when you're talking about boilers, when you're making log entries, you're going to either light off a boiler or secure a boiler. You're not going to energize it and de-energize it. So before we do that, we're going to pop open this panel and take a look at what's inside here so you can see how this works when I do rotate this selector switch from off to on. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is when I go from off to on, by default, the low water level alarm is active, and a person has to manually hit the reset button. Even though there's no water level, no low level that's been sensed, it's a default safety device. So if the boiler loses power while it's in operation and power is restored, it won't restart without human intervention. So this is the default. Even though there's water in there, it'll start with hiss, and you'll have to manually hit the reset button if nothing happened, because we're not in the on mode here. So we're going to open up this panel and take a look inside while this process works out. So I'm going to open up this live power panel, but none of my body parts are going to go past the plane of the power panel, because all this circuitry in here is active. There is live power in here, and I don't want to get shocked. So no body parts, unprotected body parts, are going to go past the plane of this. If I was to put any body parts, if I had to work on something, change a fuse, whatever the case may be, I would de-energize the entire power panel And then I would still put electrical gloves on and use the appropriate non-conductive tools. So this device right here, manufactured by the Honeywell Corporation, is set up to do a timed purge. Now what a timed purge is, what it will do is it will start the blower for the boiler, and you'll see this device start to rotate, and what it's doing is changing out the entire volume of air in the fire tubes and throughout the exhaust trunk. So what it's going to do is completely change out the entire volume of air 5 times, so there's 100% fresh air. Once that purge cycle is complete, it will set off the glow plug. Once the glow plug is ignited and that temperature rise is sensed, the fuel solenoid will open and put fuel to the nozzle, and the fuel will ignite. Now, another safety device that's installed is inside the exhaust trunk before it gets up to the stack is a temperature switch that's waiting for the temperature to go up. So if the temperature does not go up, that means you had unsuccessful ignition. You have not lit off the boiler, so the entire system shuts down. You'll get the flame out alarm go off. So what that does is it's assuming that if there's no temperature rise, there was no fuel ignition, and we don't want to keep pumping fuel inside those tubes. So let's take a close look at this. When we do energize and hit that reset button for the low water, that'll kick this off, and what you're going to hear in the background is the blower's going to start, the purge time will elapse, and then the fuel will be sent over into the nozzle there, and we'll have ignition. So I'm going to rotate from off to on. My low level alarm, my low water level alarm is active. The blue light is lit. I'm going to push the button. You hear the blower in the background, and right now the purge cycle is going. You can see this right here is rotating. And you can see ignition is rolling around. The glow plug is lit. We have ignition. And the rest of the time cycle is waiting for a temperature rise to be sensed in the stack. Fuel pressure gauge. Fuel pump. Solenoids, part of the shutdown and operating system. We've got fuel supply. My fuel valve handled yellow back there. It's in the open position. And then everything that uses diesel fuel down here has a part of the fuel return system. So that's tied in here. I got my check valve there. Goes back to the fuel oil return system. All the supply comes from the lower level. There's a common valve down there. Goes inside the Raycor filters to the inlet valves. All the outlet valves there in the back. You can see them very well. See, this valve is partially closed. We'll keep them both open. And right now the boiler is starting to heat up the water. Once we start making hot water, we're going to distribute it throughout the ship because it's not just going to naturally circulate. We have to push it around. So we've got 4 circulating pumps. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So with these 4 pumps in operation, that's distributing that hot water throughout the ship so we can take the heat away from it and warm up the ship. That's my temperature gauge right there. It's indicating less than 60 degrees. It's the bottom one. At approximately 130 degrees, we'll reach the cutout temperature, and the boiler will cycle off and be in standby until we get to about 125 degrees, and then the boiler will self-ignite again. So it'll go through the purge cycle, the glow plug, the ignition source, and wait for a temperature rise up in the stack. So now that we're generating warm water, at that point we'd go over and energize my 4 circulating pumps. The purge cycle and the light off cycle is all complete, and it's back to 0. So once we restart it, it will recommence. So I got some fuses in here, a couple of coils, the exact same thing is inside the power panel for number 2 boiler. Exact same thing. So to summarize, we've got 2 fire tube boilers. They're actually manufactured by the Waywolf company. 2 controllers, one for number 1 boiler, one for number 2 boiler. We light off or secure a boiler. We don't energize or de-energize. We light off or secure a boiler. I can roll my selector switch from off to on. My low water alarm is the default safety device. I'd have to hit the reset button. The purge cycle commences. Once the purge cycle is complete, the glow plug will ignite. The solenoid for the fuel will open. We'll have ignition. The temperature will rise in the stack, and the temperature switch in the stack will tell the controller that we're good to go, and we'll continue to make hot water. We'll keep the fires lit. As the temperature rises, we'll circulate water throughout the ship so we can transfer that heat from the water to the heat inside the air of the ship and keep the ship warm. And that's it.